Hey, good evening, guys. It's Mrs. Hussman again, getting ready to read the second half of St. Helena and the True Cross. I read the first half of chapter 4 to you yesterday, and I'm getting ready now to read the second half. Maybe save you some time and you can listen to this while you're working out or while you're on your walk or something, okay? Or maybe you can read along with me. We'll stop ever so often for a little commentary where it seems appropriate. But other than that, I'll just read straight through. This is what I had hoped we would do as a class, taking turns reading on Tuesday. But that didn't work out. So we'll try it this way. And if it helps, that's awesome. All right? Okay, so we're beginning on page... All right, where Albanus, who we remember as the Catholic priest, is speaking with Queen Helena, and she has been introduced to him by one of her slaves named Davus. And we said that this seemed fitting because the Christian religion is for everyone. If you're a slave, if you're a servant, if you're low class, if you don't have money, if you are the lowest echelon of society, you are as important in the eyes of God as the king or the queen. So how appropriate that this little slave, she calls him an ugly little thing, would come to his mistress and advise her to speak with his spiritual leader, the man from his religion, who we know is a Catholic priest. So at this point, Helena is very skeptical of the Christian religion. Like most of those in power at this time in Rome, she believed the Christian religion was some strange sect of the Jewish religion, some distant kind of upstart little temporary kind of aberration in the Jewish religion, and that it was going to be squashed soon. So, have you ever seen anybody die by crucifixion, Domina Helena? She gave a shudder. No. There is no more painful death. Albanus's voice sank to a mere whisper. And just that death he would endure for our sake. And in dying, he took on himself all of the sins and crimes that had ever been committed or ever would be committed, so that they could be pardoned. In what other religion, Domina, did God descend on earth to take upon himself a human life, human suffering, and the most terrible death? There was no answer to that. I'm at the top of page 50 now. There is still suffering in the world, Helena said after a moment, and as often as not, it is the innocent who suffer. No one could be more innocent than Christ himself, Albanus said. And those who accept him will no longer regard suffering as senseless or unjust. They will accept it as their share in the great sacrifice, the way a soldier accepts a wound in the service of his country. And it is, as often as not, the courageous soldier who is wounded. She no longer thought of attacking. She had to try to cover up her retreat. If your God were powerful enough, he would know how to stop the suffering of the innocent at least, she said sullenly. I will not even mention my own, but that my son should suffer. We all suffer from the sins of our parents, Albanus said. But do you mean that you were quite reconciled to your own suffering, Domina? The strange, unblinking eyes were grave. I don't know, she said evasively. In any case, you have no right to ask such a question. I will ask another then, Albanus said. Are you quite certain that you have done nothing to merit that which has happened to you? That was too much. She jumped to her feet. How dare you? How dare you stand in judgment over me? God forbid that I should try to judge you, Albanus said calmly. The judgment is God's alone. But you should ask yourself whether or not you are entirely without blame. And in doing so, you must be absolutely honest with yourself. You seem to have forgotten to whom you are speaking. I am speaking to a human being for whom Christ died on the cross, and who therefore must be of infinite value. I am speaking to a great lady who by right should be the wife of Constantius Caesar, and who would be if she and Constantius Caesar were Christians. For with us there is no divorce, because marriage is a partnership of God, man and woman, a partnership of three, not two. Once more there was no answer to what the man said. The most difficult thing for us is to be honest with ourselves, Albanus continued evenly. We all want to believe that our own motives are pure, good, and unselfish. But are they really? I told you, I am thinking of my son and his future, Helena said defiantly. Albanus nodded. So you did, Domina, and I will pray for him. For one moment, she almost said, pray for me too. But she caught herself in time and promptly became angry with herself. It was absurd. It was ridiculous. Besides, he would have concluded that she was thinking not only of her son, but of herself as well. The whole thing was no more than a trap to make her admit that. Do so, she said stiffly, and gave him a little nod to indicate the end of the audience. He made a swift gesture with his right hand, first vertical, then horizontal, and withdrew. The room suddenly was very empty. What a strange man, and what a strange, incredible belief. A God becoming man and taking a man's suffering upon himself. If that could be true, it really would be the secret of suffering. But how could it be true? And what kind of a magical sign was this? First vertical and then horizontal. A cross, a sign of suffering. She shivered. I have suffered enough, she thought bitterly. I want no part in that God of suffering. Everything had been taken from her. Her husband, her position, her fondest dreams of rising to supreme power at the side of a great man. She bit her lip. So she was not thinking only of Constantine. She was concerned with her own suffering as well. And when she was thinking of her son, was it not because she wanted to sun herself in his career, his rise? Selfish, unselfish. This Albanus was a dangerous man. He was stirring up things she had never thought of. She must not see him again. 10 days later, Favonius announced that Legate Curio had come and desired to speak to her. She frowned. Let him enter. No good refusing to admit him. He was the Caesar's right hand and among the high Roman officials in Britain. It was better to grant voluntarily what he could enforce if he wished. She told him just that, and old Curio looked down his nose and murmured that he would never dream of enforcing his presence on her, although, as she probably guessed, he was here in an official capacity. She frowned. Very well, what is it that you have to tell me? Do I have to go into exile? Of course not, Curio replied, shocked. So we remember that Curio is the assistant or lieutenant to the general. I guess it would be called a colonel maybe in our American military language. It would be like one under the general. An old friend also of the general, her husband, who had gone to, at the beginning of the book, responded to the summons to go to Rome that ended up being a foil to draw him away from his post so that the insurgent sect or whatever it was, the insider enemy, could rise up and take Britain in his absence. Well, his faithful assistant Curio went with him, and Curio also returned with him 7 years later when he came back to rescue Britain from the invader, and had also brought his new wife with him. And it was Curio who had told Helena at first about this terrible news of her husband leaving her and marrying somebody else. So Curio is a faithful assistant of the family, old friend of the family, close with both Helena and with Caesar, now Caesar, her husband. Okay. He just turned off the light, so I have to put my glasses back on. 10 days later, Favonius came. So now Caesar has come to speak to him. Obviously, he is in the capacity of assistant still to now Caesar. So Curio has come to speak to him, or to her, to give her some message. And so she has given him, admitted him, and he is now addressing her. On the contrary, Curio replies, the Caesar has asked me to convey his most respectful salutations, and to ask you what he could do for you, so that the only thing he can do for me is to spare me any further communications, she interposed icily. But surely you are going to accept. I was married once to Constantius Chlorus, commander of southern Britain. He is dead. The Caesar who has sent you, I have never seen, and it is not my habit to accept anything from strangers. The old legate sighed. I was afraid of that, he said sadly. But there is one thing, at least, that you cannot refuse. Is there? Helena's words cut like a whip. Yes, Domina, you must not refuse. However great your pride, you must not stop your son from embarking on a career of his own. Albanus, Helena said breathlessly. What did you say, Domina? Nothing. I was thinking of something else. Albanus. He had been praying for Constantine. And now... But this was foolishness, surely. Besides, this offer came from the Caesar. My son feels about this exactly as I do, she said aloud. But her tone lacked conviction, and Curio smiled. I am sure of that, he said. Fortunately, however, I have not come to ask him to serve under Caesar Constantius. Helena gave a bitter laugh. Of course not, she said. She wouldn't like it. Caesar's wife, I mean. How stupid of me not to think of that at once. I am in the position, however, the old legate went on, to offer him the rank of tribune in the army of Caesar Galerius. He would be one of the Caesar's aides at his headquarters in Nicomedia. So we remember at this time in history, this is when the Roman Empire divided in two. Some of you may remember that from your history books. And this ultimately really weakened the Roman Empire, and it led to its demise, still within the providence of God, having circulated the Catholic religion at a time when there was one power and control, right? So that when that one power finally fell and surrendered to Christianity and the message of Christ and the gospel, it was able to disseminate that gospel message to the entire known world. It would be the entire world around the Mediterranean, which would be like the whole known world for them. But then Rome itself, because of course God's plan wasn't to keep this one extremely, extraordinarily powerful one world government with all of its trappings of the old military glory, and that was not in God's plan. And so Rome did ultimately fall, and part of that fall was attributed by historians to Rome dividing into the West and the East. So at this time, and in fitting with the historical facts, our author has the division of Rome between those two old kings, and each of the old kings, who's now like ancient and elderly and is having trouble thinking clearly, has appointed and delegated the power of the empire to a young man, a younger man. One was Constantine's father, who is the subject of all of this grief, or the cause of all of this grief from Helena, that left Helena and Constantine in order to attain this position. That was the western part of the empire. The other was led by a delegated Caesar named Galerius. Is that what it was? Yes, Galerius, Caesar Galerius. And his headquarters are, of course, all the way in the east. So it would be, you recall that we had, I think it would be at what would become Constantinople, I want to say. I'm a little fuzzy on those historical facts. But that Constantius, the king, who in our anglicized form, it would be Constantine, became the leader of the Eastern Roman Empire, which would have been out of like Greece and Turkey. So it would have been extremely far away from Helena. Helena, of course, was in Great Britain in the west, the island off of the western coast of Europe. Okay, we all know that geography. I'm just refreshing you on what they're talking about. So she's now received news that her son, Constantine, has been appointed to be this high up official in the government of that Eastern Empire that would not be with his father, who has wronged them so terribly. So she feels more inclined to accept this than if he was going to go work for his father, whom she and her son have separated themselves from because of his infidelity. Now, what is she talking about when she says Albanus, when Curio has announced this gift, this new appointment that her son may take? Well, she's thinking of, wow, this priest had said he would pray for my son, and now this great gift has been given to him of this new job, this new opportunity. And also, Albanus had accused her of selfishness. She claimed that her pain and her bitterness and her unwillingness to forgive her husband was based on her loyalty to her son. But Albanus, the priest, correctly identified that, no, it's not just your son. Really, it's not even primarily your son who you are embittered for. You are focused very much on yourself. You're very much inward looking. You are holding on to anger and hate instead of forgiving of your husband, and that is wrong. That will always poison you. It's like poisoning your own well when you hold on to anger and bitterness against somebody who has wronged you and you don't forgive them. It's like preparing a cup of poison and drinking it yourself, because that anger and that hatred and that grudge is only hurting you. It certainly doesn't affect them. They have moved on, right? They've wronged you and they have separated themselves from you, and they're doing something different now. So that's a great lesson for us as we read this chapter on forgiveness. So she immediately thinks Albanus, right? Because letting her son go would be extremely painful. It would add to the pain. It would also be very selfless. And so if her position she's taken against her unfaithful husband is motivated by her protection of her son and his rights and his feelings, surely she would be perfectly fine with and elated by the prospect of him moving away, not seeing her anymore, probably at all. Maybe he'd see her again 10, 15 years from then, but Turkey's pretty far from Great Britain, even in 21st century terms. In the second or the third century, it was the other side of the world and almost like a different planet. It was so far because it took so long to get every place, right? So she's giving up her only joy and her only comfort that she has left, and her precious son. She'll be totally alone then. But Albanus comes into her mind. Do I want to accept this cup of suffering? Am I willing to embrace the secret of suffering, right? Partaking in the God-man sacrifice for me. All of this is coming back, and that is symbolized by her speaking almost like involuntarily, Albanus, when this news comes. Okay? All right, we go on, and we only have about less than a page left, okay? The joy welling up in her was so strong it hurt, and she had difficulty to keep up her proud composure. This, I think, he can accept, she said, trying hard to keep her voice steady. Curia was delighted. Only then the thought came to her that she would have to part with Constantine for years. Nicomedia was in Bithynia. Now we're getting into some tough names. Nicomedia was in Bithynia, at the eastern shore of the Mediterranean. It was thousands of miles off, twice as far as Rome. It would be 5 years before he would get a furlough. So many things could happen in 5 years. She might die before he came back, or something could happen to him. She pressed her lips together. When do you want him to leave? By your permission, Curio said. I'll take him with me at once. She drew in her breath sharply. Then she bowed her head. So be it. Domina, Curio said, you are the most admirable woman I have ever met. Shall we call the young man in? Constantine, at first very stiff and formal, lit up with joy when he was told that he would serve Caesar Galerius in the east. Do I have your permission, mother? You do. Tell Favonius to help you pack your things. The young man rushed out of the room, his eyes shining. Are you going east too, then, Curio? Helena asked. No, Domina. I take the young tribune only to Anderida, and there he will embark with 4 other young officers. Just one more thing. You said you wouldn't accept anything from Caesar Constantius, and I respect your words, as I am sure the Caesar himself will. But you also told me that you regarded him as dead. If that is so, you are his widow? Curio! And as such entitled to a pension to be paid by the state. The state will have to fulfill its obligations, and there at least you can't dispute me. It won't be much, he added hastily, when he saw that she was going to protest. The state is a bit of a miser. Please don't argue about it, Domina. She looked at him wistfully. I really believe that you were a good friend, Curio. That's settled then, Curio said cheerfully. And now, if you will permit, Domina, I shall take my leave. You will want to bid farewell to your son. I'll wait for him outside the house. I have my carriage there, and some of my men. He left. Only a few minutes later, Constantine came in. Helena embraced him. You will do well, she said. I know you will. Only when he had gone did she permit herself to weep. When she recovered, she let Davus come in. Go and tell Albanus I would like him to come again, she said. And that's the end of the chapter. Okay, well, it's getting dark around me. It's getting late here in Idaho, and I have to sign off now. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you in the morning bright and early for a talk about Neratio. God bless you.